4 suspects in custody. Explosives tested and ready. A New Year's Eve massacre in Los Angeles stopped just in time. Tom McCullough has all the details on this foiled terror plot from D.C. He's outside the West Wing. And the FBI says the threat was credible and imminent. 4 individuals tied to a radical pro-Palestinian extremist group were planning coordinated bombings across the city. And while that story should dominate every headline in America, the media found something more important to cover: blaming Donald Trump for a shooting he had nothing to do with. The deflection is breathtaking, and we're about to cut straight through it. So let's talk about what happened. The FBI announced that they disrupted a terror attack plan for New Year's Eve in Los Angeles. 4 suspects connected to an extremist group were arrested after testing bomb materials. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed the threat was real and imminent. That's a win. That's law enforcement doing its job for once. But at the same time, a shooting at Brown University left multiple victims, and officials have provided almost nothing. No suspect details, no motive, a campus covered in cameras, and somehow there's no footage. A person of interest was arrested. The university president admitted she didn't know what happened in the classroom where the shots were fired. In Australia, 16 people murdered at a Jewish Hanukkah celebration with legally owned firearms. Gun control didn't stop it. And through all of this, Senator Chris Murphy blamed Trump's rhetoric before any facts emerged. Not the terrorists, not the shooters, Trump. And some breaking news for your health: as terror plots and security failures dominate headlines and stress runs high, your gut is taking the hit. And that's why you need Good Brew. It is the only probiotic that survives in your hot morning coffee. The co-founder who made this stuff nearly called 911 when severe acid reflux blocked his throat. Doctors wanted him on antacids for life. Instead, he discovered BC30 probiotic. Within 1 week, his reflux was gone. Every cup delivers 1 billion CFUs of beneficial bacteria plus organic fiber. No more bloating, no more heartburn, no more brain fog. So right now, Good Brew has a Christmas special. This free travel size plus 10% off with code NEXTNEWS. Survive the stress and visit goodbrew.com. That's Good Brew, GOODBRU.com. And remember to use code NEXTNEWS. So here's what makes the Brown University situation even more suspicious. Reporters pressed officials for basic answers. That's why there's no video from one of the most camera-heavy campuses in Rhode Island. The police chief said that they shared what they have. That's not an answer. That's called a dodge. CNN reported that local officials threw the FBI under the bus, blaming federal agents for a bad lead. Meanwhile, in Australia, politicians responded to 16 dead at a Jewish event by talking about celebrating diversity. The attacker used legally owned guns in a country with some of the strictest gun laws on earth. And Senator Murphy's response to all this blamed Trump before the bodies were even cold, before a single act was confirmed. Let's go to Tom McCullough now, outside the White House, our Next News White House correspondent.
The bombs.
Tom McCullough, White House correspondent for the Next News Network. And today, federal authorities say they narrowly stopped a mass casualty terrorist attack planned for New Year's Eve in Southern California. According to the FBI and the Department of Justice, 4 suspects are now in federal custody after allegedly plotting to detonate improvised explosive devices at multiple locations across Los Angeles and Orange County. Officials describe the plot as credible, imminent, and extremely dangerous. Investigators say the suspects were affiliated with a far-left extremist group calling themselves the Turtle Island Liberation Front, TILF, weird name.
In November 2025, Defendant Carroll created a detailed bombing plot to use explosive devices to attack 5 or more locations across Southern California on this upcoming New Year's Eve. Carroll and her co-defendant, Zachary Page, led the effort to obtain and build the bombs and to recruit others to join in their plot. Carroll's bomb plot was explicit. It included a step-by-step instructions to build IEDs or improvised explosive devices and listed multiple targets across Orange County and Los Angeles. Carroll also made clear her desires. She said, quote, "What we are doing will be considered a terrorist act." Carroll and Page also discussed plans for follow-up attacks after their bombings, which included plans to target ICE agents and vehicles with pipe bombs. Carroll stated that those plans would, quote, take some of them out and scare the rest.
Court documents allege the group planned to place backpack bombs at 5 major locations, including logistics and distribution centers tied to interstate commerce, with the devices set to detonate simultaneously at midnight on New Year's Eve. The suspects were arrested December 12th in a remote area of the Mojave Desert, where authorities say they were preparing to test explosive materials. Federal officials believe the arrest likely prevented significant loss of life. Attorney General Pam Bondi praised the operation, crediting coordination between the U.S. Attorney and the FBI, and warned that investigations into extremist groups will continue. FBI Director Kash Patel said the disrupted plot posed a real and imminent threat. According to the prosecutors, the alleged leader authored an 8-page handwritten plan titled Operation Midnight Sun. The document reportedly detailed bomb construction, listed specific targets, and openly acknowledged the plan would be considered terrorism. The group allegedly communicated through encrypted messaging apps and discussed follow-up attacks planned for early 2026, including targeting ICE and ICE vehicles. Federal agents also say material seized during the arrest included extremist slogans calling for violence against Americans. Authorities stressed this was not political speech. This was an operational terrorist plot. The group's ideology frames the United States as an illegal empire and blends far-left anti-government and anti-capitalist beliefs. Experts say the case highlights how radical activism can cross into planned violence. Public reaction has been mixed, some praising the FBI, others expressing skepticism. But the evidence laid out in court filings show a plot that came dangerously close to execution. As a result, Los Angeles officials have announced heightened security for New Year's Eve events. The suspects remain in federal custody, with more charges possible as the investigation continues. And Americans can be thankful this attack was stopped. But this case is a reminder extremism exists across ideologies, and when turns into violence, it must be confronted. Again, this is Tom McCullough reporting live from the White House. God bless. Tom McCullough.
God bless you too. Looks cold out there, Tom. Stay bundled up. Now, we're going to continue here because this is what we have from CNN. After reporting on CNN that forensic testing may have been what cleared the person of interest in the Brown University shooting, John Miller seems to be blaming the screw-up on FBI Director Kash Patel's FBI, not Providence, Rhode Island law enforcement. Of course, here we are. Blame Trump's administration.
Subject of search. What I am told by my sources is that they ran those tests, and I don't know whether that included DNA and ballistics, but whatever tests they were able to run, comparing what they found in that search to what they found at the scene, were not matches. So we go from an individual who was considered a person of interest, the subject of search warrants, both at his home in Wisconsin and his hotel here, to a person who served his country honorably in the U.S. Army in an elite unit in Washington, D.C., who is being released and must be given his presumption of innocence as we go forward.
Yeah, and to your point, Jen, picking up on some of that, as you noted, when he was pressed, they were asked specifically about some of that information. He said, look, it could be fingerprints, it could be ballistic, it could be DNA, I won't say. But there was also a specific question as to whether there were weapons found at the scene and whether they led to a person of interest. That is also a question that they would not answer. The Attorney General said, I'm not going to say, John.
Well, I think it made sense from the Attorney General's standpoint not to get into the evidence that didn't point to their suspect, just because it's not a good road for them to go down. They did, there were a couple of interesting tells there. When the police chief got up, he described, this lead came in overnight to the Providence police. So that's our lead, Providence PD. But it was handed off to the FBI, who ran with the ball. When you look at the people in that hallway where CNN got that exclusive footage, who do you see? You see FBI agents, you see U.S. Marshals, you see a lot of federal officials there. And police were very careful to subtly point out during this press conference, this was an FBI-handled lead. And, they got it once it was brought back to the station, and the involvement of the Attorney General and so on. Has there been some friction between the Providence police and the FBI today over this? I'm going to tell you there has been. Yeah. But ultimately, the determination has been made that they don't have, not only do they not have enough to hold this person, but they have multiple indicators starting with his statement when they hit the door, in the early mornings of the hour, that I haven't.
Continuing here, we have Ella Cook, 19 years old, conservative Christian, vice president of the Republican Club, Brown University. She was killed by a shooter in a targeted political attack. So sad. 19 years old. CNN on the Brown shooting. I've never seen a local jurisdiction essentially throw the FBI under the bus. Not just saying we're in charge, but saying, look, that lead led us to a person of interest who ended up not being the person of interest. The suspect in the Brown University shooting being released. This is the press conference from that moment. Brown University President Christina Paxson says after 6 hours, she still doesn't know what went on in the engineering and physics building classroom.
And you said you don't.
DC when it happened and flew right back, and I'm catching up right now.
President, with all due respect, 6 hours after this shooting, and you said you don't know what was going on in that classroom? How does that happen? Were they taking an exam? Were they meeting for a club?
I don't know. I don't know.
6 hours later, and you're the president, and you don't know?
I do not know.
Well, that's kind of concerning.
Yeah, that is concerning. How could she not know? Providence authorities refusing to release any information about the suspect in custody who had been released. Let's see. Chris Murphy blaming the shooting on Trump.
We did a little bit a few years ago, but of me and flag laws, but the laws.
We have gun violence rates, murder rates, mass shooting rates that are 2 to 3 to 4 times lower than states that have loose gun laws. And many of the weapons that are used in our states for gun crimes come to our states from those states that have an ability for criminals and people with serious mental illness to buy weapons. So what we know is that stronger laws do work. And since we passed that bill in 2022, the first bill in 30 years that strengthens the nation's gun laws, gun violence rates and mass shooting rates have come down in this country. But this is not shocking, because over the last year, President Trump has been engaged in a dizzying campaign to increase violence in this country. He is restoring gun rights to felons and people who have lost their ability to buy guns. He eliminated the White House Office of Gun Violence Protection, and he has stopped funding mental health grants and community anti-gun violence grants that Republicans and Democrats supported in that 2022 bill. So he has been engaged in a pretty deliberate campaign to try to make violence more likely in this country. And I think you're unfortunately going to see the results of that on the streets of America.
That's all Trump's fault. The nerve of these people. Trump's rhetoric. Here's the president. This is 48 hours ago. He probably knows more than the president of the university.
I've been fully briefed on the Brown University situation, what a terrible thing it is. And all we can do right now is pray for the victims and for those that were very badly hurt, it looks like. And we'll inform you later as to what's happening, but it's a shame. It's a shame. Just pray. Thank you very much.
Pray. That's all you can do. Here is the Brown University FBI response. And then we have this in Australia, horrific video coming out from international press. NBC correspondent Sarah James in Australia reporting on the Hanukkah massacre.
Leader here, who's some here asking how the alleged gunmen amassed an arsenal in a country famous for strict gun control. Australia's Prime Minister today says laws may need to be even tougher and that more will need to be done to help the nation's Jewish community. A prominent Jewish leader here, whose friend died in the attack, says his community has been warning the government of a dangerous rise in anti-Semitism.
I can't imagine a time when the Jewish community will feel safe without looking over their shoulders.
Yeah. The gun laws are so strict in Australia. But yet, this all still happened, right? The mother of one of the terror attack shooters at Bondi Beach, Australia, came out and called her son a good boy.
On the terror watch list. So the mother of one of the terrorist attack shooters has come out and called her son, quote, a good boy, saying that he didn't drink or smoke, went to work and came home and didn't really have friends. Now, let me just say this. If your son has been on the terror watch list since 2019, don't fucking act shocked, and don't call him a good boy when he comes out and shoots 16 civilians dead. So the mother of one of the terrorist attack shooters...
Unbelievable. An Islamic scholar in Sydney, Australia.
We can't take away from the fact, first and foremost, that jihad is definitely part of our deen. And as Muslims, we should never ever shy away from this. And yes, there may be types of jihad, but of the peak of this jihad is that which the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ spoke about, and I'll read the hadith soon. And that is fighting in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. A physical fight, not the fighting of the nafs. Although your nafs is needed in order for your physical to go out in the path of Allah. So we're not talking about the struggle of the nafs, we're talking about the physical jihad, the physical struggling against the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to make the word of Allah Azza wa Jal the highest.
So that's an official statement from an imam in Australia. And then you see these types of attacks unfold. The president, 24 hours ago, addresses the weekend loss of life regarding Brown in Australia.
University. Before we begin, however, I want to just pay my respects to the people. Unfortunately, 2 are no longer with us. Brown University, 9 injured. And 2 are looking down on us right now from heaven. And likewise in Australia, as you know, that was a terrible attack. 11 dead, 29 badly wounded. And that was an anti-Semitic attack, obviously. And I just want to pay my respects to everybody. I must say in Syria also, we had an attack in Syria. And we had 3 great patriots terminated by bad people, and not the Syrian government. It was ISIS. Syrian government fought by our side. The new president fought by our side. But I just want to pay my respects to the families. We also had 3 injured, but 2 of them are already out of the hospital, and 1's going to be okay. But we lost 3, so it was a rough day. But to Australia and the Prime Minister, to everybody that we know so well, we get along with so well, we have a great relationship. That's a terrible situation going on over there. Think of that. And Brown University, great school, great, really one of the greatest schools anywhere in the world. Things can happen. So to the 9 injured, get well fast, and to the families of those 2 that are no longer with us, I pay my deepest regards and respects from the United States of America. Thank you very much. It's a very important thing to say. And we mean it. I can tell you in Syria, there will be a lot of damage done to the people that did it. They got the individual person, but there'll be big damage done. And the other, supposedly, they call him a person of interest, so I'll keep it along those lines so we don't get ourselves in any trouble. But they have a person of interest at Brown. And in Australia, you probably read it's been a very, very brave person, actually, who went and attacked frontally one of the shooters and saved a lot of lives. So very brave person who's right now in the hospital, pretty seriously wounded. So great respect to that man that did that. But we're here for a different reason. We're here to celebrate Christmas and to celebrate, and I think today we can say loudly, we celebrate Hanukkah. Before we begin, however, I want to...
So you saw, Tom McCullough confirmed from Washington, D.C., FBI Director Kash Patel stopped a coordinated bombing in Los Angeles 4 suspects in custody, explosives tested, a New Year's Eve massacre prevented. That's the story America should be talking about. But instead of celebrating a win for law enforcement, the media pivoted to gun control and Trump blame. They don't want you focused on the terror threat that was stopped. They want you angry at the man who wasn't anywhere near any of these events. That tells you everything about where their priorities really are. So in the span of days, America witnessed a university shooting, shrouded in secrecy, a terror plot stopped cold by the FBI, and a massacre overseas that gun control couldn't prevent. And the response from the left blamed Trump. Not the terrorists, not the shooters, not the ideology, and not the local officials who couldn't answer basic questions about the campus attack. Blame Donald Trump. That's their answer for everything. Meanwhile, Kash Patel and the FBI actually did their job. They stopped 4 radicals from bombing Los Angeles on New Year's Eve. That's a huge win. That deserves big headlines. But it doesn't fit the narrative, so it just gets buried. And that's why we're telling it to you. The American people see the pattern. They see the deflection. They're tired of being told that political rhetoric is more dangerous than actual bombs and actual terrorists. So my question for you, should the media be held accountable for burying real terror threats? Yes or no? Sound off in the comments and support our show at our merch shop. You'll find it linked in the description.